Hi again. Walter Rauschenbusch, Christianity and the Social Crisis. Rauschenbusch has been lamenting the callousness of corporations and indeed the world we're building in 1907. And now he gives a concrete example of that callousness. I venture to give concreteness to these matters by telling a single case which I followed from beginning to end. An elderly working man, a good Christian man, was run down by a streetcar in New York City. His leg was badly bruised. He was taken to an excellent hospital nearby. His wife and daughter visited him immediately. After that, they had to wait to the regular visiting day. On that day, they came to me in great distress, and I said that he had been sent forward to Bellevue Hospital. I went with them, and we found that he had been there only one night, and had been again sent on to the Charity Hospital on Blackwell's Island. At both hospitals, they said the case was not serious, and they had shifted him to make room for graver cases. The steamer connecting Bellevue and the island had left on its last trip that day. If the two women had been alone, they would have been helpless in their anxiety till the next day. I got them across. After hours of fear, which almost prostrated them, we found the old man. He was fairly comfortable, and reported that his night at Bellevue had been spent on the floor. A few days later, gangrene set in. The leg was twice amputated, and he died. I'm not competent to say if this result was due to neglect or not. I know of other cases in which that first hospital shipped charity patients elsewhere without giving any notice whatever to the relatives. The agent of the streetcar company promptly called on the family and offered $100 in settlement of all damages. I saw the manager on their behalf. He explained, courteously, that since the case resulted in death, $5,000 would be the maximum allowed by New York laws. And since the man's earnings had been small, and he had but few years of earning capacity before him, the amount of damage allowed by the courts in his case would be slight. The suffering to the affections of the family did not enter into the legal aspect of the matter. The company paid its counsel by the year. If the family sued and was successful in the lower court, the manager frankly said they would carry it to the higher courts and could wear out the resources of the family at slight expense to the corporation. The president, a benevolent and venerable-looking gentleman, explained to me that the combined distance traveled by their cars daily would reach from New York to the Rocky Mountains. People were constantly being run over, and the company could not afford to be more generous. The widow concluded to submit to the terms offered. The $100 was brought to her in the usual form of single dollar bills to make it look like vast wealth to a poor person. The daughter suffered very serious organic injury through the shock received when her father had disappeared from the hospital, and this was probably one cause for her death in childbirth several years later. The officers of the hospitals and the officers of the street railway company were not bad men. Their point of view and their habits of mind are entirely comprehensible. I feel no certainty that I should not act in the same way if I had been in their place long enough. But the impression remained that our social machinery is almost as blindly cruel as its steel machinery, and that it runs over the life of a poor man with scarcely a quiver. There is certainly a great and increasing body of chronic wretchedness in our wonderful country. It is greatest where our industrial system has worked out its conclusions most completely. Our national optimism and conceit ought not to blind us longer to the fact. Single cases of unhappiness are inevitable in our frail human life. But when there are millions of them, all running along well-defined grooves, reducible to certain laws, then this misery is not an individual, but a social matter, due to causes in the structure of our society, incurable only by social reconstruction. We point with pride to the multitude of our charitable organizations. Our great cities have annual directories of their charitable organizations, which state the barest abstract of facts and yet make portly volumes. These institutions are the pride and the shame of Christian civilization. The pride, because we so respond to the cry of suffering. The shame, because so much need exists. They are a heavy financial drag. The more humane our feeling is, the better we shall have to house our dependents and delinquents. But those who have had personal contact with the work feel that they are beating back a swelling tide with feeble hands. With their best intentions, they may be harming men more than helping them, and the misery grows. The incapables increase faster than the population. Moreover, beyond the charity cases lies the mass of wretchedness that spawns them. For every half-witted pauper in the almshouse, there may be 10 misbegotten and muddle-headed individuals bungling their work and their life outside. For every person who is officially declared insane, there are a dozen whose nervous organization is impaired and who are centers of further trouble. For every thief in prison, there are others outside, pilfering and defrauding, and rendering social life insecure and anxious. Mr. Hunter estimates that about 4 million persons are dependent on public relief in the United States, that an equal number are destitute, but bear their misery in silence, and that 10 million have an income insufficient to maintain them, even in a state of physical efficiency to do their work. The methods by which he arrives at these results seem careful and fair. But suppose that he were a million or two out of the way. Does that affect the moral challenge of the figures very much? Sir Wilfrid Lawson told of a test applied by the head of an insane asylum to distinguish the sane from the insane. He took them to a basin of water under a running faucet and asked them to dip out the water. The insane merely dipped and dipped. The sane turned off the faucet and dipped out the rest. Is our social order sane? I'll put in a link to one of our older videos. Monotony, drudgery, leisure, and the destruction of the image of God in our industrial society.